Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is Bleach, the Bound Arc, episode 73, Gathering at the Place of Fortune, The Man Who Makes His Move. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happened in the episode. In this episode, it picks up where the last episode left off. So they come out of the hospital. It's raining everywhere. This gives, of course, Ho and Ban the advantage because there's water everywhere and their particular bound dolls require water. And the battle begins. It starts with Ichigo, Renji, and Rukia trying to take them on while Chad and Inoue take Ishida and run with him. However, the Shinigami team is quickly defeated by being kind of trapped within the water, and so then Ho and Ban go after Chad, Inoue, and Ishida. They then try to fight the water, but Inoue basically only uses her shield and ends up ultimately being thrown back into Chad. Chad tries to use his arm, but it doesn't have a rapid enough attack to be able to really help, and as a result of that, Ishida does end up captured by the water, but this is of course when Ichigo, Renji, and Rukia come again, and they then start to try to fight to free Ishida, which they have a difficult time doing, and this ultimately ends up leading to them being drowned from the inside out because one of the other new powers of these dolls is, in addition to being able to just like encase them in water, they can actually force the water inside of them and basically fill up their lungs, drowning them from the inside out. And they end up facing this, but our mod souls end up teleporting the twins, separating them, which weakens their strength, and they were controlling the dolls through like a telepathic connection, so it ruins their resonance, which makes them weaker. This allows everybody to spit up the water, and ultimately they face just Ban because Ho, or actually I don't know which one's which, because they're basically always together. Anyways, one of them is unconscious, the other one is still awake. He tries to control the water, but this is when Ganju arrives, who happens to have gotten a job at the convenience store that Hinataro works at, because they are the only Shinigami ever to have to actually work when they get to the human world, apparently. Anyways, he comes in with his sand, which of course knocks over the water because I guess sand turns to mud, but water will weigh down sand and get trapped in it. So either way, he comes through the wall with his sand technique that we saw in Soul Society. And they decide they need more firepower than what the one spell that Rukia is able to use. That's a fire spell, the red cannon one. And so he uses fireworks, and these fireworks accidentally kind of kill the doll, like they set the doll on fire, and when the doll burns, destroying the doll, it ultimately ends up turning the Bount to ash. So we finally have figured out how to destroy the Bount, and that is to destroy their dolls. Whatever the focus of their doll is, will destroy them when it is destroyed. But that's what happened within this episode. So now that we've been reminded about what happened, it's time to rank the episode. First on our mostly objective ranking list, followed by the personal ranking list. And we start with our single arc supporting character introductions, and these are kind of the rest of the extra Bount, who are going to be facing the various members of Ichigo's team. Well, he most likely will end up facing the main bad guy, as is the role of the protagonist. So we start with Maki Ichinose, who is a Shinigami who's randomly decided to join up with the Bount. Then we've got Go Koga, Ugaki, Sawatari, Mabashi, and Yoshi. And that brings us all the way up to 6 points. Then we have single arc supporting character development. Ho and Ben die, and they are the first Bount to die. And because they are twins and kind of act as a unit, I am counting their death as one together, so that is another 1 point, 7 points total. Then bringing us up to 9 points, we have the resolved battle, which is Ho and Ban versus everybody else being resolved. And then there is also one more point bringing us up to 10, which is, of course, single arc supporting character growth. And this is where judgment applies, because I wasn't certain if this counted as growth or not. We have seen their dolls, Gull and Gunther, um, take a bubble of water and put it over somebody's head in order to cause them to drown or be unable to breathe because their head is encased in water. In this episode, it's an extension of that. The doll breaks into little bubbles, but instead of encasing the head, it instead goes in through the nose and mouth into the lungs, basically causing them to drown from the inside, and there isn't really anything that they can break open or break apart as they had been doing before in order to get free and stop the drowning. So it's like a more powerful version of the existing attack, but because it is a more powerful version, that is why I ultimately decided to give the point. Anyways, that brings us to how many is that? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we're at 10. And then world building, we learn for the first time how to defeat the Bount. And the way to defeat a Bount is to defeat the doll. If they defeat the doll, in this case, the core cork thing that was floating in all of the water circles, if you defeat that core, then the Bounts turn to ashes and die. And that brings us to 14. And I didn't really think that there was anything overly negative in this episode that was worth taking points, and so ultimately it is a 10 out of 10 episode. And now we're coming to our mostly objective ranking, and as always, when more than one episode has the same score, it is ranked in episode order. So the list begins with Creeping Terror, the second victim. The moment of collision, an evil hand draws near to the Quincy. This episode is in third, Gathering at the Place of Fortune, the man who makes his move. New school term, Renji has come to the human world, Bount, the ones who hunt souls, True identity of the devil, the secret which is revealed, Death game, the missing classmate, Rukia's return, revival of the substitute team. Ninth, we have Breakthrough, the trap hidden in the labyrinth, and in last so far, Water attack, escape from the shut down hospital. So my personal ranking for this episode is also quite high, mostly because it was a very action-packed episode, fighting the water. There was a little bit of comedy with Ganju and Hanataro getting off their shift because Hanataro, when he found him in the crater, decided to get him a job at his workplace. And apparently their manager is very nice and let them take home some bento boxes from the convenience store. And then they happen to sense the battle going on, so they decide to go and find him. And as the battle is kind of winding down, but also restarting because one of the twins has gone off his rocker because the other twin's unconscious, they show up kind of out of nowhere and surprise everybody because nobody knew they were in the human world in the first place. And ultimately, they end up being the ones, unlikely though it is, to actually figure out how to destroy the Bount by destroying the core. And even that's an accident because it just so happened that through the fireworks exploding inside of the water, that it ended up burning up the cork once it was outside of water. Which brings me to the thing that I haven't really been able to understand last episode and this episode is how did nobody realize that there was a cork floating in the middle of all of this water? The water's clear. They drew in the cork so that you could see it as the audience. So it's baffling me why nobody else who was fighting these things and tearing them apart, saw that cork and thought, you know what, maybe I'll slice it in half. They had to wait until they eventually got Ganju throwing a firework into the middle of it and accidentally burning the core with some of the fireworks that go off to figure out how to defeat the Bount and to figure out that there was a core in the first place, even though to me it was very obvious. But again, that's part of the comedy of it, and I did find it interesting. I know that after the battle happened, Ishida kind of left on his own before collapsing and being found. Well, no, he just, like, he kind of collapsed. He wasn't found yet. But I don't know why he left. Maybe he's feeling like a burden or something, or he wants to do more and can't, because he was captured for most of this episode by the water, unable to do anything simply because he is a Quincy. But also, like, leaving without saying anything when people have, like, put their lives on the line to try to save you, I do think that is a bit rude, and I could probably have taken negative messaging or behavior points for it, but honestly, it's his choice if he wants to leave. He has free will, and even if it is ungrateful, that's not necessarily something worth taking points for, unless I'm being petty about it, which today I don't feel petty, so I didn't. Um, Anyways, I decided to give it a 9 out of 10 because we learned finally how to take care of the Bount, and it's been bothering me for the last, let's see. I know the first few episodes had to do with training the mob souls, but basically from the time the Bount have been introduced to now, they've basically been fighting the dolls, barely surviving, not winning, not being able to do much of anything, having their attacks fail, and it's been very annoying. And finally, they have told us that they can be destroyed and how to do it, and now they can actually start their fights. It also shows, of course, all the Bount gathering, so that means everybody's going to get their own opponents that they're going to be able to defeat and fight. Well, again, Ichigo's probably going to take on the main person because he's the protagonist. But I feel a lot of hope for where we're going now, and I enjoyed the fight scenes and also the disadvantage of the fact that it was raining and therefore literally the entire world outside is a weapon for this particular doll set. So, yeah, 9 out of 10, and I did put it into first place, gathering at the place of fortune, the man who makes his move, followed by Bount, the ones who hunt souls, Creeping Terror, the second victim, new school term, Renji has come to the human world, true identity of the devil, the secret which is revealed, break through the trap hidden in the labyrinth, death game, the missing classmate, water attack, escape from the shutdown hospital, Rukia's return, revival of the substitute team, the moment of collision, an evil hand draws near to the Quincy is currently in last place. And that now brings us to the series ranking so far. And both lists are currently in sync, which is Soul Society the Rescue arc in first place, Agent of the Shinigami arc in second, and Soul Society the Sneak Entry arc in third. And for the Bount arc on the mostly objective, it's at 81 out of 280, and on the personal ranking at 66 out of 280. But with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Bleach, the Bount arc, episode 73, Gathering at the Place of Fortune, the man who makes his move. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.